No, I'm really very thrilled here to be here. I used to work 25 years for Shell, and I've worked from a distance a lot on the oil sands, and to be here in Calgary, and actually on last Tuesday I went out to the mines and actually seen physically what has been done, and what you guys are doing here is magnificent. And so I was very impressed with that. So I'm here actually to guide you through. Anthony asked me to bring you into space. The world I'm living in is the world, it's everything. So after having a session around Canada and then driving into the more direct activities on the ground, I bring you back to Mother Earth. And the organization I represent is the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and I know we're going to change it, but the acronym is even more difficult, WBCSD. So I mean, we're struggling with that, but it definitely is in your terms, a young organization, 17 years or 18 years now, built after the Rio Summit 20 years ago, when the business community felt that they were not actually heard in the international platform about sustainability, while they also believe that they have a lot to contribute to the solutions of this. So this is the, I think, impressive number of organizations which are member of our organization. But there's only one Canadian company member, and I guess you ask, which company is that? And that's Suncor. So before there was Alcan, but Alcan, as you know, has been bought somewhere else. So this is an enormous asset which we have as an organization, is to work together with these sort of 108, 190 companies. And this conference is all about collaboration. And the whole thing about this organization is to collaborate with these corporations together to advance the sustainability cause. So actually to improve the sustainability performance together, but also then as a voice outside to see how that works. We also work through a network of regional organizations. So I mean, that's an asset which we only recently start to really appreciate a lot. The green is where we have a regional network organization. The blue is where we don't. Now you can see, obviously, where we are absent. We are absent in Africa. That's a gap, we know that, and we want to work closer with African companies. Also, you see that Canada is green. We have a collaborating partner, the Axel partnership, but that partnership is not really alive a lot. And we hope through sessions like this and others that we can make our relationship with Canada a lot stronger than it is today. Now, this is, you should not imagine me, but my boss, Peter Bakker. Now, Peter Bakker is an ex-CEO of a major company, and he really is very keen on realizing that we are not in a happy state globally. So he likes to make nice pictures of this and talks about this, and I believe with him that we are not in a nice state. Now, the right-hand top corner is the work of the Planetary boundaries of the Stockholm Resilience Institute. It basically indicates that we are actually beyond the boundaries of many of the resources we have available to us. It's environment, not social. I agree with that. The Greenland ice cap is melting. Right-hand side is of course the famous pictures of the night. There are some actually new lights there, which is the gas flaring in the US. So we are doing things, and the floods. Now, I know I don't have to tell you anything about the floods because we talked a lot about that. But I'd like you to remind that at the same time when there's a flood here in Calgary, there's a major flood in India. And in my continent, Europe, not so long ago, a couple of weeks ago, we were threatened in the River Rhine significantly by floods. And so, I mean, it is not an issue just for you Canadians, it's an issue for us globally. So, but in addition to that, the social tensions are rising. Now, particularly the unemployment issue is coming on the screen a lot. We know there was a lot of social issues for development, etc., but these issues are now actually coming to the developed world as well. And we are not having a very stable society anymore, and these social tensions are important to deal with as well. And last, well, I was there, I must admit, the global community is a mess. Now, I say it a little blunt, perhaps Peter Bucker would say it even more blunt. We all went to Rio with the hope that the community would actually try to address it. They didn't do a bad job, but it didn't really, you didn't come back with a feeling, hey, yes, we're going to address these issues. No, it was this, so we actually coined that, governments are not leading. And now we're in very dangerous territory. When governments are not leading, who should be leading? So this is a little bit the playing around with the words. So we know that the planet is in trouble. Let's agree to that. I mean, it's not nice. I think, Anna, you talked a little bit about the future, and there's not enough water for everybody, and we have to share and all that sort of stuff. We have to start thinking about it. That's right. Social tensions are rising. Economic crisis has not eased. Governments are not leading. So, guys, who is left? Business. Now, we can do what we always do, and we think short term, and we let it go, make money, and do, we have a short-term profit, but we do know that that is not what we want. So we have an alternative. With that message, I come to you. That's the message of the World Business Council. It's the message of these 180 companies saying it's time that we act, that the business community starts to get out of their comfort zone and actually start to drive the scale-up of the solutions, which we know there are. Somebody said already this morning, this water technology is available. Yes, it's a bit too expensive to deal with all the issues, but all right, now let's try to do that. I mean, there is a need for doing this. So we, in the World Business Council, are prepared to be a little bit like a Don Quixote, going out in the world and say, hey guys, it's time to change. It's time to do that, and we, business community, can actually help to do that. Now, that's the core of our message. That's a change from the past. In the past, we were a little bit more passive. You know, we said, we were in these discussions and say, yeah, you must change, etc. But if you, I mean, somebody said this morning, if you know that something is going wrong, you cannot say to somebody else, you do it. You have to start to change. So we in the business community, if we say that, after I showed you the slides, that we know we recognize these issues, then all right, guys, then we must take the lead. Now, how are we going to do that? I mean, I don't have the answer yet for you. I mean, we are in the middle of that process, but I take you on the journey where we are today and see how we're going to do that. Some of you probably know, because you're not members of our organization, you may have not. About 5 years ago, we created a Vision 2050, which was actually part of the past of the World Business Council. We were sitting together and working with lots of people. It's corporation, so we invite everybody and say, it's a very interesting exercise, because what you say is, in 2050, this is the world I want. And this is the world we want. Okay, I think we all can agree that that's the world we want. But then we backcast and we step back and we ask ourselves, where are we today? And what should we be doing to get there? So that's, in scenario terms, it's a backcasting. So you set the goal out and then go back, rather than saying, oh, what if all the things are happening? Because this drives action. It drives making choices. And that's what it's all about. We have to make choices. And somebody else said it this morning as well. It's about choices. It's about the right choices. And, and that's, so we did this, and we had, then the idea came, say, all right, well, I skip a few pages because it's after lunch, and, I'll make it easy for you. But, if you take creative path, you have to go back to where you are. And now we have to drive change, action, actually to get there. Because if we do business as usual, as you saw on that little slide, we don't make it. So we have to step out of it. So we now in a process to take that vision, tear it apart, and say, all right, what is the short-term action we collectively have to do? And then ask ourselves then the next question, what is the role of the business community actually to help to achieve those goals? That is what we now call Vision 2050, Action 2020. We really want to set goals for the next 7 years and saying to ourselves and to you, all right, what is it what we want to aspire in this? And let's do it. So these actions have to be, as it probably means, actionable. And you can also translate it, they must be bankable. So we want to create a sphere of a drive where we can actually say to you and to us, because we have to commit ourselves to action in that sense. We want to go to that direction. The funny thing is, it's not funny because it's happening, is that that's actually where the world is today anyway. So we are not really that apart from the world. Now this is our Vision 2050. It says all these wonderful words, you know, zero waste, zero net energy buildings. That's also that space. I think you said, well, can we define what is sustainability? What is that space? Of course we can define it a little bit. I mean, in the sense, and define it in that what, you know, if in this world of Vision of 2050 there is no more waste. Okay, we can say these things. But actually, in order to achieve that, we call this the sphere of you know, pathways where we say, all right, let's go and move in that direction. And these are the next 10 years what we're going to do. And we call them the Roaring 20s. That's what we are in that space. Now, my boss, CEO, when he saw this, he says, it's great, but there are too many actions. I can only handle 10. I mean, I'm a CEO, I preferably 3, but it's a little bit more complex than that, so give me 10. So we are in that space. We are trying to get this together into something which he can stand up. I can talk about water, but he has to talk about all the others. So that's where we are. So what are we doing? This is a complex slide, but it is interesting. We have said to ourselves, all right, and this is all about collaboration. We are a business community. We are not, we can make products and we can do things, we want the things right. But in order to tell us in which direction we must go, we must ask other people. And we asked the scientists, and said, the scientists, you know, can you help us to define the priorities we have to focus on? And then ultimately, we ourselves are then driving an action program. So we're in this phase where we are then having these actions, and then we are going to say, all right, how are we going to drive business plans? We want, in 8 months, that our 180 member companies sign up to at least 3 of the action items we have identified out of 10 and say, this is how I am going to contribute to it. Well, that's a dramatic change from a business platform type of organization, because we are actually going to hold our members, and the only member is not in the room, fortunately, otherwise he would scream perhaps, say, hold them accountable, say, if this is the direction we need, and if you are a member of the World Business Council, and we recognize that we have to scale up our activities, this is the area where we have to work, then you must deliver on that. But there are other parties, of course. I mean, there are the public policy requirements, the regulatory requirements. It's not alone, so we have to work together to do that. Right. Now it becomes really interesting and complex, but it's okay. I'll guide you through this. Take the right-hand side. You all know, and you know by now because I will tell you, that the Millennium Development Goals end in 2015. There are development goals, etc. They are being suggested to extend it. And now I put my water hat on. Water was not at all properly recognized in the Millennium Development Goals. They were sort of buried somewhere, and they did some funny things like, you're in compliance if you have a water management plan. Now, you don't improve the world with plans, but anyway, that's it. We worked very hard with the business community to help, which is called the high-level panel, where one of our CEOs, Paul Pullman from Unilever, was a member. And I don't know whether there's any Canadian on it. It was a multi-stakeholder event, and they said, all right, what is it what we have to focus on in the next decade on issues? Hey, yeah, here it is. So, dealing with access to water and sanitation for humans came out as one of the 10 priorities. Now, you don't know, because you're sitting here and you don't know how much energy that costs us, also in the business community, to get it there, because this is a world outside. I mean, we all think water because we're here. Now, all these other, how many millions of Canadians, they think different. They just don't think about water, they think about energy, they think about other things. So actually, to get your argument why water is important and has to be collectively addressed in the world community is a real difficult case to make. Now, of course, I think somebody said about the linkages, I think it is about healthy lives, and water is there as well. So these were the sort of priorities which go into the UN system. On the left-hand side, you had Jeffrey Sachs, the Sustainable Network Solutions, whatever it is. They also created an area of what is needed in the world to be done. I'll be honest, I don't like that process. There was no drop of water in the process. It was all said, and that's the difficulty with water. It says, yeah, you know, water is everywhere. So I mean, why should you address this as a subject matter? We say, if you don't address it as a subject matter, it loses the attention and you don't manage it. So you see here, water, right? So water came up in the end. What you don't know is that this word was added 1 minute before they published it. Because we became angry. I mean, as the World Business Council, we wrote a letter to Jeffrey Sachs, and my boss is in the panel and all that sort of stuff, and we said, well, we like everything what you do, but we want to go public that we disagree with the fact that you don't address water. So that's the space we live in. I mean, we think that water is important, because otherwise we wouldn't be here, but you really had to fight for a lot. Now, these are the World Business Council's key themes. Now, you can see already they're shorter, they are less language. There's also a story behind the water. We asked the scientists, what are these priorities we have to deal with? So we asked Jan Rockström of the Stockholm Resilience Center, and he had 200 scientists, and they came back, and of course, climate change, release of nutrients, ecosystem degradation, harmful substances, these are the key issues. No water. So we basically told them, well, what the hell are you telling us? Yeah, water, you know, it's one of those things which, you know, supports the other things, and it's not really a global issue, it's a local issue, so I mean, it's not there. The funny thing is, of course, I run the water program, so I didn't like that at all, but I'm just an individual. I mean, I'm not part of, so I have to respect the process. Now, you can't remember the process, but the process is that advice then goes to the business, our members. And the funny thing is, and I really want you to recognize that, is that the business community stood up and said to the scientists, hey, you made a mistake. Water should be there. There's a reason for that also, because it is an important ingredient in the process, but it's also because they feel they can do something about it. So the reason why this is here is not because the science community told us that water is a problem. It is because the business community said, we want it there, because for us, we feel it's a very important issue. So what it demonstrates is that the water issue collectively, globally, is rising as a very strategic component. So a long story to give you a short answer. It's getting there. But don't assume, and I'm talking for somebody who operates globally and who operates in big companies, don't assume that if we don't continue to put energy in that, from a science point of view, from a government point of view, from a business point of view, that it stays there. Unless there is another sort of calamity, but even those are not really changing it. I mean, it's a blip in the attention span of politicians, and then they go do something else. So we really have to work this space and continue to do that. And that's my job, and we keep attention, because what we want is basically in our own action program for the World Business Council that there is a solid foundation to do work on water. And we do want that in the ultimate declaration of the UN, when they say these are the Sustainable Development Goals for globally we go after, that there is a water component in it. Now, you may disagree with me, then we have a debate, but that's what I feel, that's what my member companies feel. So that's where it is. So it took a little bit of time to do that. So now we come to water. This is, it's too much, too little, too bad. I mean, that's where we are. I mean, it's different in different places, and this is a slide just to illustrate how complex it is and how in different parts of the world and different time zones, you have different issues to deal with. And don't forget this. I mean, we tend to forget that. I think this is a moral disgrace. I think that we can still think about that we can do this, that people are still not able to go to a toilet when they go to school. I find that impossible to understand, but I will say in a minute what we do about that. So that combination. All right, now what do we see? What is these companies? Why is it that we are in the World Business Council concerned about water and think about this? First, it's increased uncertainty. We don't know anymore. I mean, we talked about it this morning at breakfast. I mean, there is a greater uncertainty about what is happening. Availability, quality, and timing. We talked about droughts, we talked about floods. Water as a human rights. This 1.8 billion businesses are increasingly be asked, what are you doing about this? This is not just anymore, if there's a moral obligation, then we cannot just leave it to governments or to NGOs. We have to do something. Competing demands, we talked a lot about that. Even if the business community only uses 10, 15%, and the agriculture community uses 85%, if both want to grow, you have a conflict. So it is not about agriculture because you're using so much. No, it is about the conflict between the two parties who both want to grow. And if that commodity, water, is not there, then you have to start to do things. And I liked a lot what I heard this morning from the minister when she said that she got all the users together. I would actually like to see also then the regulators and everybody together and see, get a proper discussion going on this. And we're working with the OECD to see whether we can get some principles going on how you would like to do this. Redefining performance, we had a presentation this morning about the water stewardship standard. Businesses are increasingly held accountable for their water use, transparency, how they manage it, etc. True value. Yesterday we had a lot of discussion with the oil sands people about the value of water. When you want to reallocate water, you have to look at the benefits that water gives to others or how people perceive that benefit. So we increasingly see that companies are being asked to report about the externalities, not just the amount of water they use, but perhaps the amount of water they use in their products, which they buy for an input. Interdependency, we talked a lot about this energy, food, and water nexus, from supply to demand, wastewater as a resource. I'm trying to get the number in my head, but it is an amazingly small number. If you think about globally, something like 10, 50, 20%, 25% of wastewater which is actually treated. From the industry side, we don't even know it because it's not reported. So that is water, which is a resource because once it's treated, it's a resource for somebody else, so we can spin it around. And climate change we talked about today. A big, quick, how do we in the World Business Council Water Group think about then how business can look at this water issue? One is that the heart is stewardship. I mean, that's, you operate in the watershed, we bring it down to the watershed, and it's the stewardship, the interaction with the other users, and that's where you have to manage it. But we have focused on 4 components. One is better understanding the external business environment, how the changes are going to take place. If my friend Jan Del from CH Hill would say, the trend is your friend. Now, the trend is not your friend anymore. There's a new trend coming. Now, what is that trend? How are you going to anticipate what is coming? We do a lot of work on that. We do a lot of work on asking the business community, what can you do about access to water and sanitation? Because if you operate in the place where there is no access to water and sanitation, in the environment you operate, then you know you get a conflict very soon. The value talk reuse. So this is the sort of the concept by which we set up the business response in water. And I don't think it's going to change a lot with the new action framework which we're going to have. Because this is, you see all my slides were polished. This is unpolished. This is just copied and pasted from the latest report. Because this is the sort of space where we are looking in, where should we be focusing on. It talks a lot about, we talk a lot about the freshwater withdrawals in balance with supply and demand. Okay, that's nice, but what are we going to do? So have a quick look at this. This is the area where we think our action program on water starts to sort of come together. Now, we're working, this is all about cooperation. We're working with the World Resource Institute. We're working with the German Development Agency, GIZ. We're working with the ICN and others to help us to shape this. But ultimately, it will become a business agenda. So we have to start to own it. We need all the help of others to help to say, hey, is this the direction we need? But when we translate it into an action program, it is ultimately the responsibility of the business community to go and run with that. And that's where we are. So what is the type of solutions? This is the pick of the type of things we see companies doing, which we can actually throw in the pot. And I think you should be happy that there's a Veolia one, so that's good. But that's, on the right-hand bottom side, there's so much energy in our waste. Why are we not using this? The technology is there, but we are not actually, somebody said, I'm from the utilities area. There's a huge opportunity here. It's not happening. Now, what can we do to scale this up? Top right-hand side, PepsiCo, PepsiCo, perhaps you don't know, but PepsiCo is a big agro company. It's not a beverage company, it's actually bigger agro than beverage. So they do a lot of work on direct rice seeding, which actually reduces the water content a hell of a lot and improves productivity. Their problem is when you ask them, hey, it's great to do it, how can you scale this up? Then they come into all these problems of government, regulations, etc. So that's another thing we have to do. Top left, Jane Irrigation, I'm going to visit them in a month. Absolutely fascinating how you can actually improve productivity a lot by irrigation. But again, the business model is not really, if you don't value water, why would you save water? Give me a good reason and spend money upfront on your irrigation equipment. We can have a debate about that. But if you don't able to regulate it, in the case of India, it's very simple. It's in the end of the day, it's energy. Because the Indian farmers pump the water, they then use the water. If they reduce their water demand, of course, the energy demand is reduced, and that's why the government is interested in irrigation, because it saves energy, and India has a big, renewable energy for desalination. So you see a little bit we have hundreds of those. Hundreds of, we had this morning already an example on the fridges of companies doing this. What we need is actually to take this in our bag, engage with everybody and say, hey, let's scale this up, guys. These companies are ready for it. And I'm quite sure and we want to create an environment in which that can be done. So let's row together. And I thank God the first version of this one was business and governments, but we changed that to business, science, and NGOs. We're in the same boat. Let's be very clear about that. The business community has, and certainly the global business community, large multinationals have this longer term view. They see the opportunities, they see the need for this. They want to create a little bit of a ripple in the environment so that we can do that.